What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. Today's video is going to be pretty much a talk by thinking about this one album that I'm going to address with my own personal experience with it. I say this because this album holds a very special place for me. Not just for me as a metal fanatic and just a fanatic of music in general, but this is one album that has absolutely been so nostalgic and very reflective to think about my past, and this was one of those albums that has made me realize that music is even bigger than ever. Today is the 20th anniversary of the third studio album by Slipknot, and that is 2004's Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. There are so many albums that many people have addressed. They are life-changing, they are game changers through their own experience of listening to music. Well, with Volume 3, I was 9.5 years old when this came out, and I did not know Slipknot at all when this album's era was increasingly popular. Of course, Slipknot had become popular from the releases of the first two albums earlier in their career, but when Volume 3 was unleashed, this album was the turning point for the band, and it changed a lot of things. I've already done my review on this album, gave it a 9 out of 10, but before the album turned 20, I have decided through occasional walks to listen to this album for the first time in a few years. Volume 3 is a heavily special album for me. Before Slipknot became my favourite band, Green Day were my favourite. When I was really young, I was so obsessed with that band. I remember listening to Dookie, Insomniac and Nimrod the most, besides American Idiot. But when I was around 11 or 12 years old, I used to watch a shit ton of music videos of different bands, most of them through the modern era. You know, the pop punk, the alternative metal, to, music videos from previous decades like the grunge movement. Some of the music videos came up through the sounds of heavier bands, and Slipknot was one of those bands. I remember the moments that I was staring at the TV, looking at the Duality music video for the very first time, and I had never ever discovered something that manic and intense at all. This was the band that has opened my eyes and ears to discover the band and to think, what is this? What is going on? So I was really interested to check out the band through different music videos, and when Before I Forget came on, that blew me away. I was then so hooked. That music video made me a fan, and when I did get this exact CD of Volume 3, I remember playing it on Windows Media Player in the classic Windows XP days. and I was thinking about the band so much more that they were becoming my all-time favourite band. I had become a fanatic of Slipknot very quickly when I had been discovering the first album, and that was totally a different experience by itself. The self-titled album being my favourite Slipknot album. It'll always will be. But when I look back with this album, it is just as so good to listen to. I will say that it is near perfect. There were some criticisms that I did address from my review. I could do without Vermilion Part 2 still. And the production done by Rick Rubin, to which Corey Taylor hated the experience of doing the album, and Corey cited Rick Rubin as overrated. He also said he will never work with him again. The production is severely loud, but this was at a point during Rick Rubin's career that the loudness war controversy was happening. In my opinion, by the way, I'm going off topic here. In my opinion, the worst production Rick had ever done on any album for any band was Metallica's Death Magnetic. I can't listen to that production whatsoever. I hated it, and I still do. Another one that is just blistering with so much compression, Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So when I listened to Volume 3, there were times that, yes, I love a lot of this album, but it's the sound that could have been improved. As a Slipknot fanatic, that many of you guys already know that for millions of times now, I do have different editions of this album. So this is my long time CD copy of the album. Then I did collect different editions. This is the Volume 3 limited edition. Here is the Australia/New Zealand tour edition. And my latest one on CD is this Japanese pressing. The Obi strip didn't want to stay outside the case, so I thought, why not just put the Obi strip inside? Which is really cool, and I've listened to the Japanese CD pressing of Volume 3. It's still really good. And I do have Volume 3 on vinyl when those different coloured vinyl reissues came out a few years ago. Volume 3 is as a hugely personal album for me that I could have added this as a life-changing album. But I didn't, because more appropriately and importantly, in my opinion, this was the beginning journey to discover metal in a totally different direction. I was listening to Fear Factory, System of a Down, Black Sabbath, and some other kinds of music. But as obvious that it is to say this, that I thought Slipknot was one of the heaviest bands on the planet. Now there are heavier bands of today. But my admiration for this band is still high, and I owe this album a lot. Before I Forget is my all-time favourite Slipknot song. And besides, there are other strong highlights, like The Blister Exists, 3-0, and Welcome, which I've always loved, Vermilion, is another highlight. Pulse of the Maggots, The Nameless. Through the different sounding tracks, when I looked back and listened to this album, I ended up falling in love with some more of this stuff. I've already mentioned about Vermilion Part 2, but when I was listening to Danger Keep Away, not the full version, but the shorter version that's on this, I did not expect to be gravitating with it even deeper than ever. I love that song. The song with the repetition of the samples from Craig. I remember watching a YouTube video from somebody who used the track and decided to add multiple different videos and photos. I think it's more of the photos of Slipknot in the very early days from the Make Fee Kill Repeat period. Now, for some reason, not gonna lie, when I hear Danger Keep Away, those sampled pieces of the keyboard from Craig's contribution to the track, it's one of those hitting home moments. Same with the vocals and the overall virtuosity that this album still delivers. It is a different Slipknot album to begin with. However, this was the beginning of Slipknot to express their maturity, the aftermath of what happened from the past, and it's a huge open-mindedness progression for the band musically and artistically. It would not surprise me at all that some Slipknot fans would see this as their favourite, with pretty much most of the stuff that I've been saying on this video. Unless there are separate experiences from other people with this album that if anyone wants to share their thoughts about it with their nostalgia and memories, please put them in the comments down below. I'm really intrigued to know. And with that being said, Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses by Slipknot, is now 20 years old and is always one of my most favourite Slipknot albums. This is always one of my top 3. I know there's We Are Not Your Kind that is, in my opinion, the band's strongest album in years. And with me liking a lot of what the end so far was, and now with the heavy hype of the new lineup of the band with Jeff from Dirty Little Rabbits and Eloy Casagrande, I'm still very, very grateful to be a very long fan of Slipknot. And Volume 3 will always make a huge impactful moment for me to discover metal music in a bigger way and to know that Slipknot became my all-time favourite band. Thank you guys for watching, and I will keep you guys and Maggots posted for more videos in the near future.